guys who have Windows, which version do you have of Windows? 10? 10 Professional? It's nice because Docker is only supported natively on Windows 10 Plus. So we depend on this for the local development. So do you guys have all Docker installed? Did you get the stickers? You can start setting up. You have this PDF in the home of your sticker. Basically, what we need to check up first is if you have Java 8 installed in your machine, the Docker.
Just try and command line Java version, so you're sure you have Java running. 8. Bless you. Bless you. Also. Okay, so you all have Java 8, right? Okay. Thanks.
Yes.
And then?
And Docker? Do you all have Docker installed?
Okay.
Ah, yes, he's going to give it.
So you also need Docker 1.12. It's important to be the latest one. Okay. So do you have it? If you don't have it, we have this installation on USB stick. Okay. So just go to command line and type Docker
minus version again. Yeah.
I assume it's about 112, not 112 dot something.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's asking for updates every day.
Yeah.
So 112 something.
Yeah.
If you run Mac, make sure that you're running Docker for Mac and not the Docker toolbox, because there's this difference, and we must run on Docker for Mac.
The new one.
Yeah, that runs
Yes.
on the native Mac hypervisor.
So are you okay with this? Is anybody installing Docker now? Okay. So please do so we can all continue. Okay.
Yes. And also, he can introduce us. It's just a checkup before the workshop. So if you want to, I can, yeah. We are the WeDeploy team. Hi, my name is Lais. I'm from Brazil. This is Ciro. He's also from Brazil. And this is Igor from Serbia. We work on WeDeploy for 2 years. Yeah, Igor a little more. And we are the part of the core development team. So we are really sparse, like Eduardo, Zino are in LA, me and Ciro in Brazil, Igor in Serbia, but we want to show you how it feels to develop your application using WeDeploy. So if you saw yesterday's talk from Zino and today's keynote from Eduardo, you saw how to create an application on the dashboard, right? You can go there and install your service. And today we're going to focus on the local development. So how can I use WeDeploy locally, run it, test it, feel how it is to develop with WeDeploy, and then push to the cloud? Okay, so that's why you need this setup, this checkup first. That's why you need, for this demo, you need Java 8, because we want to show you how to deploy your code. Docker is the engine we use for local development, for local infrastructure. And the internet is for later in the demo that you have to push it to the dashboard. Okay, so for the guys who came out later, do you all can check if you have Java 8 installed, Docker, the newest version, and also internet access for notebooks. If you want, we have stickers with the preparation of this workshop. So let me know. Just raise your hand, and the guys can give you the stickers.
Can you continue with Docker? Everybody installed it? All right.
Okay, it's important also to get the stickers because we need to install the command line for Docker, and we have the tutorial all in the pen drives. So if you can just copy for the pen drives, it's going to be faster than cloning from GitHub. So if you guys want to copy everything from the pen drives, oh yeah. Yeah, because we depend on native Docker. So native Docker depends on Hyper-V, which is the Windows version of Hyper-V. So we need to have this Docker version 1.12 native. And they don't give support for this in Windows below 10. If you want to tune it, if you can put like 4 or 6 gigs of memory and like 4 CPUs. If you want to have a better, the more memory you put, the better the experience will be. So it's up to you guys. So we suggest at least 4 gigs so you can run the infrastructure on like 5 containers and have a good development experience. Okay, so if you guys got from the stickers, we need to set up your computer so we can develop there. So we have this folder, the redeploy folder. Oh, sorry, too much. Oh, true. Okay. So this is the content of on the pen drive that we gave you. Right? Does everyone have this in your machine? Okay, so first thing, we can install the command line for WeDeploy. So you can go to the CLI folder and just run this bash script redeploy. It's going to install the command line in your machine for you. If you are on Windows, it's the same, right? You should. No, it's SH, right?
If you run on Segway,
Yeah, we have the CV
Yeah.
on Windows, but if you don't, I think there is a. Can you go to the drive?
Here.
There is a
yes.
installation for Windows users. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So, are you okay with command line? Can you go to the command line and type
We.
help? Yeah. Just let us know if you're done with this. You're done. That's it.
We help works.
Huh?
We help works.
Yeah.
We help. That's it. That's that.
Yeah, basically what we have. What? Yeah, it's not working. Okay, does anyone have a problem installing WeDeploy command line? Can we move on to the next one?
Yeah. Can anybody raise the hand who has a problem with the command line? So everyone is set with it. Okay. Okay.
Cool. So the second one is to avoid problems with internet. We put the image that we're going to need in your Docker locally in this folder. So you can go to this images folder and just load them in your Docker.
If you have a Windows, just open this sh file because it's just one command that you can copy and paste into the command line. Okay.
Yes.
Because it's just calling Docker to load. Oh well, actually it's not because you can do it manually.
From Windows?
Okay, so if you who is Windows? Not me.
Has anyone been able to install the images locally? Running the script? Okay. Docker import.
So on Windows, you should go, you can't run this images.sh. So on Windows, you should go to the same images folder and run Docker, import, and then
Let me show you the
go
folder.
one tar, one by one. Okay? So go to, yeah, so each of these stars has to be loaded. So just go Docker, import, WeDeploy out latest star. Docker, import, WeDeploy data latest star. Okay? This is on the Windows. Okay, no problem. So this will take some time.
After you import the images, you can just type Docker images and check if you have those 5 images, 6 images actually, that we need. Okay?
Now go back. Go back, go to the images.
Sorry. The folder? Yes. You have these images folder, you have the tars inside. Ah, the CLI, yes. If you have Windows, it's a Mac. Okay. You just run this and install the CLI for you.
So, but it basically does this for this. You just go one by one and then load all the images.
Sublime, nice.
Okay, for the guys who already finished this, the next step is just we're going to start the session, right? So you have this workspace folder inside WeDeploy where we have 3 folders inside. Demo quiz, the master, the tutorial, and the dev QA, which is your actual workshop. So if you check out, we're going to work on this workspace folder, right? Basically, what we're going to build here is this demo application here, dev QA. It's a project already on WeDeploy. So if you guys don't have an account on WeDeploy, go up there, sign up. We're going to deploy this to the cloud by the end of this workshop. So you can go to WeDeploy.com and sign in with GitHub, Google, or sign up for a new account if you guys didn't do this yet. So this project has 5 containers, one of different kinds of data, UI container, authentication, email, and a Java container. That's why I did Java 8. And the repository for this containers is in WeDeploy demo quiz. So if you guys want to check out on GitHub, we can open WeDeploy demo quiz. This is the project that we're going to create here. Okay. So the tutorial is in the tutorial branch. We have 10 steps from beginning with the hosting container and ending up deploying it to the cloud. And we have all the steps here. We're going to follow this step from the tutorial. So later, if you want to try it on at home, you can just follow this setup here and start and work at home without problem, right? So this is a tutorial I'm going to be following this in this workshop. If you guys want to get started and take a look in the repository. Okay? Does anyone have a problem with loading the images on the machine?
It's not import.
Yeah, it's low. Yeah, it's Docker low. He has a problem with Docker.
Is this a Windows machine?
It's a Windows, yeah, but he cannot even run any command in Docker.
Can you check the environment variables for Docker? Docker host. Does it have toolbox installed also? Okay, let me just present while the guys are still setting up those machines. Real quick, the quiz, it's a really simple API that we're going to deploy. We call it DevQA. It's a web application where you answer questions like correct or wrongly. So you have a sign in and sign up page where you can log into this application. You guys can try it. It's deployed with WeDeploy. It's DevQA WeDeploy.io. So after you log in, you have just questions in your UI, and you can choose which answer you want to put. So if you choose correctly, you're going to show how many times it was answered correctly and how many times it was answered wrong. And you can see the ranking in real time right next to it. So basically, it creates a section. You can just answer a few questions, and then you get the final ranking of the users. It's a pretty simple, straightforward application, but the idea is to get you guys to do this basically from scratch and put this on the cloud. Okay? So if you go to this repository on GitHub, you can see in the In the main branch, you have, in the master branch, you have the application itself, structured in a way that WeDeploy is able to understand, build it on the cloud, and deploy it. We are going to follow this tutorial branch. So if you guys want to open up, because we are going to get some code snippets there, so it's good for you guys to open this up in your browser and just look into the tutorial. The getting started part, you basically did it with the pen drives installation of command line, Docker, Java. After you have everything set up and running on your machine, you just need to run our local infrastructure. For that, you just type rerun in your console, and it's going to take like around 30 seconds, and you have the infrastructure of WeDeploy running locally. If you guys want to hit it, you can open a second terminal and try to run this locally. Should print this output. If any of you has a problem, like it could complain that some ports are still open but not application. So if you guys can go there and just run it, we're going to need this running during the entire workshop. Okay. So did any of you guys had a problem running this? Let me just do this.
If you load successfully the images into your Docker, you should see this rerun starting sequence in one console, so don't touch it after that. Because if you press Control-C or something, it will stop your local infrastructure. Okay? So you should be able to see it running in.
You can also run it in demo mode. It's just a matter of adding a flag. But we're running the same command here, just to make sure everybody gets this.
If any of you guys had a problem with this run, just raise your hand and we can go and help. If it starts to download an image, it means that the previous step to load the image to Docker was unsuccessful. So it could take some time to download it. Does everyone else has it running locally? Can you guys raise your hand if you have it running? Only 3 guys.
What was the name of the GitHub repository?
It's demo quiz.
Demo.
Yes. Okay, after I have this running, we can go to this workspace folder. We have everything set up there for you to start the tutorial. So we can just, inside WeDeploy, we can go to workspace. We're going to be working on dev QA. It should be an empty folder just with the README. Ciro. Entendi. Is anyone else running the local infrastructure? Okay. You guys do. Did anyone have a problem with a port, an open port or something like this? I think one of you had a problem with the port 80. Is anyone else having this problem? The command line, you try to run it and then it complains like some ports are still already open? No, right? You have this problem? Which port is complaining? 80? You have something running in the 80 port? He can.
Who is also running Windows service and cannot run over properly? You and you can, because he is also having the same issue. For some reason, Docker is not.
There's an error. It says hardware assisted virtualization and data execution must be
Okay, I will start now the tutorial then. If you guys are having some installation problems with Docker and you get this solved during the workshop, for each step we have a folder inside which is final, which contains the final version your workshop should have after this step. So, I mean, your workspace, sorry. So after each step, we have the entire content of your workspace as it was after applying this step. So if you are able to run Docker and the infrastructure during the workshop, you can just get the last final step and continue the workshop with us. Okay?
Did you do the step when you run everything?
Not yet. We build in Lincoln Master, yes. We should know, not yet. I think that we maybe should skip it and start the tutorial. Okay, so I'll continue the tutorial now. Let's go to the first step. You guys who were able to run the local infrastructure, you can go to your workspace, DevQA folder. Right, should be empty just with the README. The first step is just to get your UI and deploy it locally. So you can go, just copy from the first step the assets that we give you. We give you the UI, the partial UI that you have for the first step. So you can just copy to the workspace using the command for the first step. And if you want to check, sorry? Okay. So if you go to the UI folder, you can see that you have, sorry. Sure. You have an index HTML, some JavaScript, the hacking page, and CSL assets. So it's basically just static files that you want to host. So to host it locally, you only need to have a file describing this service that we call container.json. So if you create a file here in the UI folder, name it container.json, and you put a description to this project, like the ID, its UI, and the type of your container, which for static hosting is WeDeploy hosting. So if you fill this container.json with this content, it should be enough to describe this for WeDeploy. If you go to the tutorial in the workshop, basically you have to put this content in your container.json. You should have this structure, right? The important file for us is this container.json, which whatever is inside the container is going to be served depending on the type of this container. So as you want a static hosting container, it's going to serve everything inside this folder. Right, so after you do this, you can run this command here, relink, describing the project. I want to link this container to a project named DevQA. So after you run this command, you should see this output. Let's do this. So I created my container.json, right? I can link it in my running infrastructure. Oh, wow. Okay, you should have seen all these files. Basically, you should see this deploying container and the final status to app. If you do list, you can list everything that is running on your local container. So you can see, that you have this container UI, inside the project dev QA, and it's being served in WeDeploy.me domain. So this domain works. It points to localhost. So if you just hit this domain in your browser, you're going to be able to see your local files served. So you should have this main page for your quiz, right? Basically, it's just JavaScript, some content like put in the HTML, and you have your local container. So we can start working on this from this UI to create our application, right? Does anyone have a problem with this step? Everyone is able to see local files served locally, or static files served locally. It's okay. I'll go. If you have a problem, please just raise your hand, and we can go and help you. So this is pretty basic, just to feel how to use the command line, how to push the stuff. So for static files, it's pretty simple, but it should be simple for deploying your local code, right? So what we have in the second step is a Java microservice. It's just a server built with Spring Boot. It listens to 2 URLs, and it's implemented in Java using Gradle for build management. So you can just copy the assets that we give you as the second step here. So if you go to workspace and just copy it, you should have this generator alongside the UI. And if you go inside, you can see it's a simple Java project with Gradle. So if you are on Mac or Linux, you can just Gradle run, and you can see what it does. Okay, so after have it running, we configured our application to listen to the port 8090, sorry. Other ports as well. 8080, 9300, 24224, I guess. A few ports. It shows the ports that it contains. So if you open in a browser, localhost 8090/questions, you should see one endpoint of these Java services, which is a URL where you can get a few random questions from this web service, right? So imagine you have your microservice in Java implemented, and you want to deploy it with WeDeploy. Basically, what we want to cover in this step is this. You have your microservices in using Gradle or Maven or whichever build tool you prefer, and you want to deploy this with WeDeploy. So basically, you usually develop like this. You use localhost and a specific port to access in the browser or locally, and you just run it with Gradle. It shows the port that is complaining when you run. Ciro helped some guy with the problem with the port 80. Okay, so after you have this Gradle service locally running, do you guys are able to run with Gradle your project locally? Did anyone have a problem? It's okay, right? So how to deploy it locally using WeDeploy. It's basically the same steps, right? So you just need to create a container JSON file inside your project folder. And inside, you just need to give an ID to this service. Let's call it generator, the name of the folder. And you can describe the type of this service. So this service is a WeDeploy Java kind of service, right? We only need JVM inside. And this is particularly different because it runs on a different port. It runs in 8090. So we need to tell WeDeploy which port should it use in your container when it hits 80 in the URL. So when you hit like generator.devqa.wedeploy.me, which port is it going to redirect your call? So we can describe here port and put 8090, which is the port that we put here in our application, right? In our application port. So you can run your application in whichever port you usually do, and you just need to map here in your container JSON, and WeDeploy is going to be able to solve it. So after you do this in your container JSON, you should be able to do the same, just with link. So we can link to the same project, right? It's only going to be up after the container is listening to this port. So the deployment will wait until the server is responding to this through this port until it finishes the deployment, right? So you just wait until the Gradle run task finishes. Okay, so it's up. So now we know our server is not only running, but it's responding to this port. So now we can go to the browser and hit, instead of UI, we can hit generator, and you hit our web application, right? We can put questions, and we can see the same result that we did on localhost port 8090. It's running through a local infrastructure. One cool thing with this is when we run locally, we had access to the logs, right? We could see the server running, the output of our Java application. We could leave it running and check the output. With WeDeploy, you can also access these logs. If you do WeLog inside your container, let's check here. If you run relog and specify which container you want to check the log and which project it is deployed, you can see in real time the log of your container. So you can leave it with watch flag and just continue watching your log, right? If you want to put this here, use hot deployment, hot refresh, just restart the container, you can check this. Was everyone able to deploy the Java container locally? Did anyone have a problem with deployment of Java container? Okay, one more information which is important for this. It's build hooks that we provide on container JSON. So now you don't have just code. You have source code that you have to build and deploy, right? So locally, okay, it's going to run a Gradle run task. It's going to be dependent on the build task. It's going to build and then run if it's not built yet. But when you push your source code to the cloud, you didn't run anything there. So we need to run everything. If you just do Gradle run, every time you deploy a new instance of your container, it's going to build and then execute your server every time. So if you want to prevent this, you can put a hook in your container JSON, specifying which task is going to execute during the hook step. So when you deploy to the cloud and we fetch your source code, we run this build task separately before the deployment. So we can create your image with your code already built, right? Imagine you have a Node.js container, you have to npm install or something else. So you can specify in your container JSON what you want to do during the build step of your service. So for example, if I go here in my container JSON and specify, okay, this container has this hook build, which is going to run Gradle clean build during the build step. So what I can do here is the following. Inside my container, I can run the command webuild, and it's going to run this script. What is nice about this is this abstracts from you what's going to be executed inside your service during the build step. So if you have multiple services, each service is using different technology and has a different build step, you can go up to your project folder and build every service at once. So you don't have to specify which script you're going to run to each container that you have. So let's go to the third step and see this in action. We have now 2 microservices, right? We have our UI, we have our Java microservices which is providing the questions, and now we want to start building our application. So let's put this together locally in an organized way using the concept of project. So when you go to dashboard, you create a project, and you just see the domain allocated to you. Locally, you can do a similar thing by creating a file named project.json. So if you go to your workspace, you have your 2 containers, right? Generator and UI. You can create a file named project.json. And you can do the same like you did for your container. You can specify the ID of your project, which can be dev, QA. And then you have this. You don't have to specify anymore when you run relink which project this belongs to, because now it's configured in your project folder. So now I'm here in my workspace. I have 2 containers, 2 services, the generator services, the UI services. And with this project.json, I can just do we unlink, for example. And it can figure out which project I'm running, which containers do I have, what should I do with this structure. For example, if I do relink, I can link both containers at the same time. Tá na janela? Tá.
May I ask something about the build step, or the build hook?
Hmm?
May I ask something about the build hook? Is it
Yes.
built locally via the command line, or is it built in the WeDeploy infrastructure?
Actually, the link command it's more than just deploying to the local infrastructure. It really links to your workspace. So you can have the experience of doing something in your workspace and see this affected.
Yeah, that was my next question, because I noticed
Yeah, you didn't
next
notice.
March, it automatically updated the index.js. Okay.
Let me show you. Let me show this in action. Yeah, it's a good question. I actually forgot to mention this. Let me unlink first here. Okay, I guess the UI now is going to be better. Yeah. So you can see it's deploying every service in my project folder based on the container JSON that I have inside each folder. And it's linking to the same project that we described in project JSON, right? So after we link this, we can see locally the UI. But this is not deployed, like we don't copy the code and put there. We actually link our local infrastructure to your workspace. So what you can do is the following. You can change your UI, for example, you can see the effects in real time. So if you have, I don't know, you're developing your UI, you're changing it, just refresh your page and you can see the change here, right? So if it's a Java service, you have to restart your JVM actually to reload the class path. So if you're developing this and you have this generator project and you added a class with some new behavior, you can just restart your container and it's going to reload the JVM and then you have locally the same effect. So you don't have to deploy every time you change. You can just click once and...
I see a Docker mount in the running container. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so we want to have a good development experience locally. So,
Lots of feedback.
yeah, the idea is, okay, Java, you have to restart to reload the class. But if you have a project, if you did something like this, like my server has this ability to reload the class path every time it sees a change in my folder, it's going to work there because, right? We give you the Java container with JVM. So whatever you do in a project is going to have the same behavior. You just mount in the volume. So if you do something like with half deployment, you can have this there. Yeah, in the folder where your container is, in the root of your container. So it's inside general. There is one inside UI to describe the UI container.
Because it doesn't install the actual UI, it just UI. If I say the project have QA linked, it doesn't show me the generator.
Is a generator next to the UI in the structure? Is your file structure like this?
It's under, yeah, under dev QA.
And you have container JSON there?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the guys are busy, right? Yes, if you have this file structure, you should have. You can maybe we unlink in your project folder and then we link again and see what happens. So a nice thing to have, when you have a project, you can have project level configurations now, like we did in the container level. So in the service, I can specify which port is going to listen, how to build it, or which type it is. For the project, we can specify information like which container is going to handle requests to my local, to my project URL. So if I hit devqa.wedeploy.me, who is going to answer this request? So you can specify, for example, the home container of your project. We want, for example, for the home container to be the UI. So if you change this configuration in the project, you have to link it again. We don't do this automatically for you. So as I change the project level configuration, I have to unlink and link my project again, right? So after this change, I should be able to hit the devqa wedeploy.me and see my UI there. Is it working for you guys? Does anyone have a problem with this project configuration? Does anyone have a question so far? I don't think so. Right? Okay, so what is the good part of having this? Because you could have what we have so far if you had a HTTP server, UI, and you run with Gradle your project. You have like 2 different ports, but you all have the same result, right? But with this UI, you can code your application like you would like to have this deployed online. So, for example, let's start integrating our containers. We have a UI that should show up questions, and so far it's showing like hard-coded information, right? So we can integrate it with now our microservices that generate questions using WeDeploy client. So we already put for you the WeDeploy.js file. We put it locally so you don't have internet issues here. But what you can have in your JavaScript is just code consuming from your other services. So what do you do here? If you check out your UI, the JavaScript, you can see that we loaded the domain of your application from the URL. So you don't have to worry about WeDeploy.me, WeDeploy.io, or your custom domain. So basically, I take the 3 last parts of your URL, which should be the project ID, the WeDeploy, and .me or .io, depending if it's running locally or on the cloud. So with this, I can add this function, for example, here in my code. I have JavaScript code to handle questions, and I can see like the get questions is just hard coding the information, right? I have 1 question with 2 answers, 1 is right and the other is wrong. So if I change this method to call the WeDeploy client to call my generator container, I can actually consume my generated questions from the UI, right? So I can just hit generator with the path questions, using a random flag and limit it to 3 questions per session. And then I can just, when I get the questions, I can just render them in the UI. So if you just get this method for the snippet, and you can put in your JavaScript. And the second function I need to change is to check answer, because we had this also hard-coded, right? So we can actually use the WeDeploy client to check if the answer of the user was correct or not. So we still hit the same services, the generator services. I just inform which question was asked and which answer the user hit. And it can tell me like if it's OK or not, and then I can choose which screen to show after this. So you just change the JavaScript. You don't need to do anything. It's already linked, like I said. So you can just hit your browser, refresh your page, and now it's loading information from your generator service, right? You can just, it's the same container. I just change the JavaScript, go there to the browser, and I can see the result, right? So you should see like 3 questions and then the ranking. Does anyone have a problem with this step? We are locally consuming our own services in the same way we're going to do online on the cloud. We just use the domain, the name of the service, and we can integrate those 2 in your own application. Okay? So the next step is to start putting some more information. Like let's use data. Let's start to store information about what's going on in our application. So the user is here. He's already consuming the questions from our microservice, and it's going fine. But he's answering the question, and we have no idea not storing this, right? So if we want to add a data store to our project, we just need to create a folder and describe it in a container JSON. It's as easy as that. The local infrastructure already has this for you. So if you just create a folder there, and you put a container JSON inside. Let's call it data. And it should be of the type WeDeploy data, right? Then what I have to do now is just to deploy it. I can go to my data folder, run a relink. I don't have to specify anymore which project I have. The other ones are already linked, so I can link my data container. now I can see that I have in my project 3 containers. I have data, it's running, it's up. I have my generator in my UI. So what can I do with this data? Let's first store the answers the users give. Oh, sorry. I have to configure my data store. Yeah, that's true. After you create a data container, basically it has, if you install it in the UI, you have this everything already set up. Every path mounts to a data path. So locally, you have to configure this locally in this file api.json. So you can describe which paths are you listening to, if it has data ability or not, and then you can specify more information like if it has authorization rules, who can hit this path, if it has validation of parameters from the request, response, which methods it listens, like post, delete, get. You can have all this information in our documentation, right? We covered this in the data session. So let's configure first while it's loading there. We just need to create this API.json file here in our data folder. And for now, we can just open all the paths. Like every path is data true. Any method that hits this container is going to listen to data. So now that I changed the configuration, my project's already linked. I need to reload it, right? This is not as easy as the hosting, that you can just change the JavaScript and go there. But you can just go to the data container and do a restart. Restarting is enough because it's already linked. So if you restart, it's going to load this new configuration, and it's going to be working. So the information that I said, it's not. It's all described here, how you can configure the API.json to configure the data and path, right? If you want to check out later, go all out. You can put validation to your methods, describe which paths you mount and which types of parameters you accept or not. That's it. I think so. Yeah, we're running out of time. The next steps is putting more, using WeDeploy built-in functionalities to add stuff to your project. So we started with a demo, really simple like this, just yes or no question. We can store this information in the data store, and later we can use this information to show in the UI. So the other steps cover this really well. You can try it from home. Let me just. So you have locally a folder in your workspace, which is WeDeploy demo quiz master. If you go there, you just re-link it. It's going to have the entire application for you. It's a master branch, right? So you can now go there if you want, the demo quiz. You can unlink your project to remove that link you had before, and then we link it. Sorry, it's the demo quiz master, right? The demo quiz is the tutorial that we are following. So if you just link this container, demo quiz master, you should see the 5 containers there, all complete. The complete UI with login, sign up, authentication, data container, authentication container are installed for you. Email for password recovery, it's covered in the tutorial if you see the steps. And the generator Java container. So if the complete demo has all these pages, right? There's a step to add this login, integrating with the authentication container. There's a step to add this sign-up form that you can just create users and submit to your authentication container, and so on. There's a step to integrate data. Then you can have this information from data store. Like how many times this question was answered, because you're going to store every time the user answers a question. And then you can say who answered that question, and then you can create a ranking in real time. And you can show like, okay, so Lais is using it, and she's just answered one more. And this is all using the WeDeploy client, right? So you can just have this information in real time. So if you follow the tutorial, it's really simple. It's step by step how to have this completely integrated. And the last step is basically deploying this to the cloud. So you have this folder already, it's complete. So if you just git init it, now it's a Git repository, right? Did you create a project in your dashboard? If you hit dashboard.con and create a project with any ID that you want, you can deploy this container to the cloud as your project, right? This is the last step of the tutorial. We need to rush there because of the time. But if you go to dashboard, you can do it remotely. So I'm going to show you the flow to deploy this using our Git server. But if you have GitHub, if you fork this demo and you make your changes and want to deploy from there, it's also possible. Yeah, I think my internet. Hmm?
It's fine. We need to step on the Wi-Fi.
Tá funcionando aí? It's weird.
Now it's back.
It's back? Yeah. So I have this dev QA project already, right? With the same containers. I can just push there, but you guys can create a project and do the same. You go to the deployment setup of your project, and you can see how to push to WeDeploy Git container. So you can clone the repository. I just did a Git init, so I can just add a remote there to point to git wedeploy.con / my project ID, right? You can do the same locally with your project.
Oh, you didn't enter. Just press it.
Oh, okay.
It's the backlash.
Yeah, so I have this remote. If I just git push to there, it has to be in the master branch for this, for our Git server. I can see here it's pushing there, and you can see build was triggered. If you want to check the actions, the activity in your container, you can see here also that I pushed a new version to git wedeploy.devqa. The build has started, and I can watch here in real time when it's finished and deployed. Yes, and during the build, you can also check the logs if you want to see what's going on in your containers. Yeah. So after you have this running locally, you tried it, developed it using the infrastructure. You can see the URLs are working, everything is okay. You just do this, add a remote, push to our Git server, or put in a GitHub and add a hook. And then we can have this deployed to the cloud really easily. Yeah, does anyone have a question? We are out of time now. Our workshop is over. So sorry I didn't go too many steps. There's a lot of setup.